Next up on This Week in Law, we've got Tom Merritt in the studio, Evan Brown and Eriq Gardner joining us to talk about two of the biggest copyright cases of the year, Aereo and Dish. We've got lots of copyright things to talk about, including YouTube putting data out about search takedowns. Facebook wants your kids. We'll talk about that too. Next up on This Week in Law.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Law is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiL, This Week in Law with Denise Howell, episode 165, recorded June 8, 2012. 20 trillion between friends. This episode of This Week in Law is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to Squarespace.com and use the offer code TWiL6. And they now offer free domain registration with annual plan subscriptions. And enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a free 30-day trial plus double storage, go to sharefile.com, click the radio microphone, and enter the promo code TWiL. Hi, it's Denise Howell, and you've joined us for This Week in Law. Thanks so much for coming back with us this week. We've got Tom Merritt here in the TWiT Brickhouse studio joining us.
Hey, how's it going, Denise?
It's going great.
Thanks for having me
here with
on.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Evan Brown is on with us, too. Hi, Evan.
Hello, hello. Happy Friday. It's good to be back after, being out last week. So, hope we can have some fun today.
Welcome back. We missed you.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
We're also waiting for Eriq Gardner. We had him briefly, and hopefully he'll be right back with us because, as Evan was pointing out during our pre-show discussion, about half the things we plan to talk about today, Eriq wrote. So we'd really like to have him join us if we could to chime in on his own reporting. There he is. Hi, Eriq. Well, we don't have audio for you yet, but working on it.
Baby steps.
Try again. You there, Eriq?
Can you hear me?
There we go.
There we go. Hooray. Excellent timing. Have you been? Good to have you back on TWiL. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? And you're gone. All right. Well, we're going to try.
It kind of looked like footage from Apollo, the moon missions. Did you see that?
Denise, we have a problem.
Unknown to us, Eriq is out in space. Should make for an interesting show, should we get him on. But let's start talking about some of the many things Eriq has been covering over on his blog, The Hollywood Reporter Esquire. Of course, there are two really big copyright-related cases pending right now. The Aereo case is one of them, and the Dish case is another. And I was just talking to Fred von Lohman at the Tech Policy Summit earlier this week, who told me he thinks they're the two biggest copyright cases of the year, and I'd have to agree with him. Eriq, you're back.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yay.
Great.
All right, so I was just saying we've got Aereo and Dish pending, and these have got to be just the two big juggernaut copyright cases of the year. You have been covering them in depth. Why don't we start with Aereo? And it would be nice, Eriq, if you could bring people up to speed if they're not familiar with the technology, what disruptive thing it is that Aereo is trying to do.
Well, the technology is a little difficult to describe because they have lots of different nooks and crannies. But essentially what they have is a big warehouse of antennas in Brooklyn, and they capture over-the-air signals. They have some sort of device that collects them, and each of the antennas are assigned individually to a subscriber. And then the transmissions are retransmitted out to the particular subscriber to their iPad or to any mobile device. So the broadcasters argue that this is streaming. They argue that this is just a glorified DVD system where they're not really doing much of anything except just giving people a more convenient way to get a signal and put it wherever they want.
Right. But it seems to me we've had the Cablevision case, which has said that it's okay to have your DVR operated remotely, but, to outsource that function, if you will. And Aereo seems to be relying on that same principle that they can do the same thing with your antenna. Is that right?
Yes. What they're basically saying is that they've come up with a system where it is individually assigned to each of their subscribers. So there's no kind of transmission out to multiple audiences, to the internet at large. They're also saying that what they have is essentially a DVR with long tethers, where the signal comes in and the owner of the box has control over the signal at all times, and that they're just playing back the audio.
So we have a 2-day hearing on this issue in a New York trial court a couple of days ago, and we're not expected to have a ruling on this for a while because the judge needs to cogitate and digest the arguments and briefing on this complicated issue. But what's going on here, the judge itself has said that these are very slippery legal issues. There's a lot at stake. But what's going on here is whether or not Aereo will be enjoined from operating. So there's a lot at stake, obviously, for that company. For the broadcaster network side, they are saying our entire business model is at stake. You will not be able to watch things like the Super Bowl on television.
We'll yank the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Yeah,
if Aereo is allowed to persist. Eriq, are they being a bit hyperbolic with that language, or do you think there's a lot of jeopardy here?
Actually, I don't think that they're being too hyperbolic. In order to succeed on a preliminary injunction, of course, they need to show two things. One is irreparable harm, and one is a likelihood of success. And on I think they actually have a better case on the irreparable harm issue. The danger is not necessarily that Aereo is going to steal all of their customers, and that all of a sudden, if Aereo wins and prevails, that there's going to be a huge migration of consumers who suddenly cut cords, cancel their cable or satellite service and sign up with Aereo. The danger is that all these other companies, Dish, DirecTV, Cablevision, they might decide to mimic what Aereo is doing and saying, oh, well, this is being found legally permissible. Well, let's hang that over the head of broadcasters when it comes to retransmission deals. And if the broadcasters decide that they're not going to lower the fees for to broadcast the channels, then perhaps we start exploring ways to do this on our own end. That's the big danger. It definitely is. It would be very, very big and impactful for the TV industry. That's not to say that the broadcasters are going to win the day, because I think that the issues of whether they are likely to succeed on the merits of the case are a lot more close, and that's really I think going to be the big thing to be resolved in the next few weeks when the judge makes a decision.
One more question for you, Eriq. Is there an issue in this case about Aereo paying the fees that any other retransmitting entity would pay?
No, not at all. Because many of these signals are just free over the air.
Okay.
So unlike Cablevision, which got into a feud with the broadcasters a few years ago when they wanted to do remote DVR storage, there's no licensing agreement between the broadcasters and Aereo. And that's one of the reasons why the broadcasters say that this is completely different from what happened in Cablevision, is because they say, well, at least Cablevision had some sort of contracts with us. Here you want to just take the signals and steal it and enter it. Totally cannibalize our market in this totally different new vein. They, all the broadcasters hope eventually to start making money digitally and to sell their shows online to consumers. This threatens that entire market.
So, Tom, what do you think? Are you ready to outsource your antenna?
Yeah, I want this service. I think any logical consumer wants this service. What's to me it turns on is the fact that there isn't a decent way to gather a monetizable rating from online viewership. And that could be another outcome of this, is that we develop that. The biggest argument in the favor of the broadcasters is if someone watches a program on Aereo, yeah, they see our commercials, but it doesn't count, because Nielsen doesn't rate those viewers. They only rate people who watch on a traditional television. Now, eventually Nielsen can catch up and create a rating system that would work with that, and that argument goes away. But they've also got this other arrangement that Eriq mentioned where they can collect retransmission fees under the oddly named must-carry rules. There's a rule that says that you have to carry all the local stations in your area on cable unless that local station opts out of the must-carry rule, and then they can charge you. They can, create some sort of arrangement where they charge. That's where we've got kind of an accident of the way things used to be running up against the way things are on the internet now. And the FCC is actually considering allowing must-carry rules to apply to online services as well, which would affect Aereo. So I think you're right. This is an absolutely landmark ruling that's going to set the stage for online video for the next decade.
Evan, what's your thought on all of this?
Well, I mean, gosh, I can't really add anything on top of what Eriq and Tom have said when it goes to looking at the analysis of this situation. I guess my point would be, the thing that I would want to underscore in this is that I have a feeling that whatever the outcome of this particular dispute is with Aereo, it's not going to affect Aereo all that much, because it's what's going to be more significant is the holding that we get from the court when it comes to these copyright issues for the expansion of new technologies and new innovation, in much the same way that we have this innovation going on here because of the Cablevision case, which in turn, not a direct descendant, but certainly in the same line of thinking, in the same space of innovation created that we got all the way back in 1984 from the Sony case, talking about fair use and time shifting and all that stuff. So the way that these cases, I think the way that they become relevant and the way that they stay relevant is in the pathways that they open up for further innovation. And I would much rather spend time thinking about that and talking about that than considering the particulars of what's going to happen to Aereo.
Eriq, there's an interesting little twist here. A couple of months ago, the Kaleidoscape folks got shut down again, and have been, they had one trial that they actually prevailed on. They got sent back for a retrial and lost that one. And now at the appellate level, it looks like Kaleidoscape is not going to be able to offer the service that their company is designed around, which is archiving your DVD library on a server and making it much more easy to use. That strikes me as, a pure time-shifting convenience play, much less disruptive than what Aereo's doing here. They're out of luck, but depending on what the judge rules imminently, Aereo may be able to go forward. Do you find that kind of a crazy dichotomy?
A little bit. I see what you're saying. I don't think that there's anything comparable to what's going on in the Aereo case because of just the huge stakes involved and the big legal issues. With Kaleidoscape, it was a little bit different because it turned on legal issues about circumvention of piracy protections and also the movie companies and all that. They have their own plans to introduce their own product. Now, that doesn't necessarily go to irreparable harm and all that, because that's not an argument, to stop a service to say that we want to do this. But on the other hand, as you say, what they were doing was maybe just on a gut level, a lot less nefarious. They just wanted to, bring, more convenience away for people to store DVDs and all that. But they lost on the merits of the case, and I guess history will tell whether they should have tried to do deals instead of tried to operate the service and insist that they were in the legal clear.
Well, I'm fearful the lesson for Hollywood may be we've got the DMCA that prevents decryption of copyright protected materials like DVDs. Unless there's a specific exemption, but we don't have a law that says you cannot, a specific law that says you cannot pull over-the-air transmissions out of the air because, again, going back to how things historically have worked, that's how television used to work, and I suppose for some still does.
Are you suggesting we'll get a digital over-the-air protection act?
I'm
DOPA?
Yes. DOPA,
airborne
maybe in
DRM.
The works. All right. Well, I want to get to the other big disruptive case, but first let's thank one of our sponsors for this episode of This Week in Law. We're here with Eriq Gardner from The Hollywood Reporter Esquire, Tom Merritt from TNT, and Evan Brown from Internet Cases. And we're here in part because of the support of ShareFile.com. In the legal world, of course, our days are filled with emails going back and forth, sending out legal briefs, contracts, and important materials. And particularly in the legal world, we have to deal with multiple attachments and increasingly larger files, which, when you're operating in the world of email, which we all are these days, leads to bounce backs and confidential information being sent out, potentially without security, a very bad thing. Evan, do you still use messengers in your practice?
Occasionally, if there's something that's, so if we're in a real anachronistic situation, sure.
Right. So really what you need to be doing is have the ability to send huge files online, as we're so used to doing with smaller materials. But still, the technology for email isn't quite there, and you wind up in a situation where you've got a stack of documents and you can either send a human being over with them, or you've got to figure out an efficient and quick way to get them there online. There is a better way, and that's ShareFile by Citrix. I use them, and I think you should too. With ShareFile, you can send files of almost any size easily and securely. Instead of attachments, they're sent as a secure link. They're easy to send, easy to receive, and they're tracked so you can see when it's received and opened by your recipient. Plus, ShareFile allows you to access your own files from anywhere, your laptop, your tablet, your smartphone, so you can get work done wherever you are. Now, in my own case, I have a small solo law practice, so my technology infrastructure is very lean and mean, and ShareFile basically replaces what would be a firm extranet for me. It's exactly the kind of way that I can let clients know, go here, and you're going to find this large volume of files that we're looking at, so they can pull them up. They can look through exhibits to contracts. They can look through exhibits to large motions and briefs, and it's all there electronically. And from my end as a practitioner, I can customize the site so that it's part and parcel of my law practice. It's not like sending someone out into a foreign environment. They're going to know that they're dealing with me, their lawyer, in a secure way. So it's a really wonderful product. And if that weren't enough, we have an amazing offer to get you started. We've got a 30-day free trial for what would already be fabulous storage and everything you would need in order to send large files. But just so that you can really kick the tires on this thing, ShareFile is giving listeners of TWiL double storage. So go ahead and load up your very largest files, your media files, huge exhibits, what have you, and give it a try. To do that, go to sharefile.com, click on the radio microphone, and enter the promo code TWiL. That's sharefile.com and type in TWiL. We thank ShareFile so much for their support. All right, Eriq. So the other biggie that's pending is the case against Dish, which I guess we were sort of on pins and needles as to who was going to file first. Obviously, Dish wants a determination on this as well for their auto hop feature. So Dish managed to beat the networks by a few hours into the courthouse. So there's a case pending in New York, a case pending in California. Looks like Dish may have gotten the jurisdictional advantage there by filing first. But actually, it's kind of interesting that the networks decided to sue it all because they eschewed the opportunity to litigate this 10 years ago, didn't they?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, for those with long memories, will remember a little company called Replay TV who was trying to do something similar, introduce a DVR that let consumers automatically skip commercials. And this was about a decade ago, and the broadcasters filed a lawsuit, and the lawsuit never really got that far because Replay TV kind of went under. But at the end of that lawsuit, a bunch of consumers represented by the EFF invited the broadcasters to continue on. They said that that they were harmed, that they potentially were harmed, that they had used the service, and they wanted to fight on the merits of the case. And at that time, the broadcasters said, we're not interested. You don't really have standing. We've resolved the situation. Let's not continue. So that case was put to bed. But obviously and predictably, something like this came up again now, 10 years later, and now the broadcasters have to go against a much more well-moneyed, better lawyered defendant, or if Dish prevails, I guess they'll be the plaintiff. So I honestly think it was a big mistake, for the broadcasters not to just get it out of the way and to fight on those issues, especially coming right off of the Napster decision, coming off of everyone freaking out about all these file sharing services and the future of copyright. Nowadays, and this harks back to the whole Cablevision case, and I'm sure that's going to be of importance again here. So the broadcasters definitely have a big fight on their hands.
Yeah, they definitely do. Evan, are you surprised that back when they had the chance to go after a few consumers and nail down the issue, they just packed it up and went home?
Well, maybe that's part of the issue. They were just going after a few consumers back then, and this is Murphy's Law. My phone rings right when you turn to me to talk. So, yeah, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, I guess. I mean, if we could put ourselves back into whenever that was, the early part of last decade, it's hard to get back into that mindset and to have an idea of where technology was going to go. And clearly with the benefit of looking back on that, we see where it went. We see what a steeper hill the broadcasters have to climb now, what with especially the Cablevision case, which if you pick on that one, if a person picks out that one part that talks about the making of the cache copy and all that there, that which should seem to be favorable to the technological model that's going on here. Who knows what's going on in the collective mind of the broadcasters, in as much as that even exists as an entity, the collective mind of it. So it's easy to look back, but it's just like with the Aereo situation, what's going to be relevant here is not so much what happens in this particular situation, but where technology and innovation is going to go because of the space created by decisions like this.
Right.
Well, one thing I should add and clarify, and is a little bit different than the replay TV situation, is that in the last 10 years, storage capacity has ballooned, and one of the things that is doing that Dish is doing is it's not just skipping ads. They're also they're also automatically storing a lot of the primetime programming, basically for a week. So what the broadcasters are arguing is that this auto hop service, also a feature called Primetime Anytime. And I wonder, do lawyers clear these titles knowing that there's going to be a lawsuit about it? But it's basically being argued that they're going to be running a renegade video on demand service. So the aspect where programs are recorded combined with the storage capacity of the DVR is combined to a kind of VOD service. And that wasn't an issue in the replay TV case, because at that time, you could store maybe 5 programs before you ran out of room on your DVR.
Right. Eriq, I'm wondering if you know whether the service is going to allow you to skip ads for all recorded content that have ads, as opposed to just the network things that they're going to record by default.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So
exactly.
They say they're going to automatically record Fox and NBC and ABC and CBS, but if I want to go watch Mad Men and drop out the ads, is it going to do that too?
I haven't seen the service, but I assume that if you set it up to record Mad Men, that it will skip those commercials too. But I don't think it'll it won't know going in unless you direct it that you love Mad Men, let's record Mad Men for you and skip all the commercials. But if you set it up, I'm sure that's that way it's easily done.
Right. So the big question in both of these cases is whether the law is going to protect these business models, because technology has clearly found pain points for consumers. In the Eriq case, people want more flexibility about where and how and what they're going to pay, I assume, for their broadcast television programming. And in the Dish case, of course, people want to be able to drop out commercials. They're just terribly annoying. So Tom, in a perfect world, if you were the advisor to the television broadcast industry, how could they change their business models and still survive?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of good questions here, and I do know how the auto hopper service works, just so you know, and you can't auto hop anything except the 4 major networks, and you have to turn it on yourself, so you're activating it. So you could do a little bit of PR that says, hey, we want you to watch our ads so we stay in business. I'm not sure that would work much. Another option would be to provide incentives to watch the commercials. The idea of skipping commercials is that we don't want to see things that we aren't interested in. We watch movie trailers on demand. We go seek them out and find them. Those are ads. Those are commercials, but we don't think of them that way. So coming up with commercials that people actually want to see, product placement, is being explored vigorously by the industry to various effects. Sometimes it sticks out and it's really clunky. Sometimes it's done really well. But really, in the long term, what all content producers have to understand is that you have to go directly to the viewer and say, you know what, we can resist this, we can delay it, but eventually you are going to be in control of what you watch and when you watch. So we need to market it directly to you in a way where you either accept the commercials or you pay directly.
Yeah. I didn't even know that the tequila on Entourage was a real tequila until someone finally clued me.
Well, then that didn't work very well because I didn't know that either. Yeah.
But it is. You can go out and buy it. The thing that always comes back to me is the 57 or more like 857 channels and nothing on problem. That you pay your cable or your satellite company for all this stuff that you really don't want. I really wish they would move to more of an a la carte, pay-as-you-go model for programming, but I think we're probably a long way away from that. What do you think, Eriq?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen proposals by John Kerry and a bunch of congressmen who talk about this every so often, especially now that these retrans fights have been causing blackouts to lots of customers. A lot of people just don't understand why, when they sign up for cable service, they're forced to get hundreds of channels that they don't care about and pay exorbitant fees instead of the few that they want. And as much as everyone wants to change that system, you're right. I think that there's going to have to be a broader revolution towards digital on demand. I'm not sure that it's worth changing the laws to do a la carte when there's stuff down the road which is going to shake up the entire cable and satellite industry. So I see what you're saying, though.
Yeah. What do you think, Evan?
I think it's pretty clear that IP version 6 is going to be the savior of the media industry in this, and that is going to allow more targeted advertising, so that the ads will get to the people who need to be seeing them, and that's because there's something like 670 trillion IP addresses in IP version 6, right, Tom? Something like that.
Yeah, well, it's 2 to the 128th, I think.
Oh well, yeah. Maybe I was off by a factor of 20 trillion.
Yeah, you may have
been. So we put wired devices in each sector of each viewer's brain, so that they can measure, and each one is assigned an IP address, so that the advertisers can measure what's responsive, and then you just target those ads, and they'll be irresistible because you know precisely what that person wants. So that's how IP version 6 is going to save all media, because of the new ways that content can be distributed.
And Intel wants to do a platform where they have facial recognition and can actually tell who and how old and what demo you're in, and then automatically play the right ad for you there.
So that's for being online on the web. Do you see that porting over into other entertainment venues?
They're pushing Nielsen and the broadcast networks to say, hey, we want you on board with this. We want you in the system using this. This is the way to make the money off those people that you're worried about losing.
People get freaked out about that. Denise, have we talked about it on the show? It was that startup. It was actually a Chicago-based startup, and I don't remember the name of it now, but it was where, like the bar, I think that was launched in a bar in San Francisco. I'm sure people in the chat room know about all this, and maybe we've talked about it on the show before, but it talks about the demographics of the people that are actually at that venue, and it's a mobile app, so you can see which places are hopping with, a crowd that's 21 to 29 or whatever, versus a place that isn't very, there's demographic information that's gathered. I mean, isn't there some kind of inherent creepiness about this that's probably going to be a bit of an obstacle as well? There's always the sacrifice of privacy for more, granular, the ability to advertise to a person in a more granular way.
All right, well, let's round out our copyright topics for the day. Susan, now someone's going to have to help me with the pronunciation. Wojcicki?
Susan
at Google.
That's the safer. Yeah.
Susan spoke at D recently about the content ID system in a rebuttal to charges that Google just doesn't care about piracy. And she went into great detail about the resources that they put into content ID and how it works. So it's definitely worth checking out. And Eriq, I'm wondering if you think that Susan made an effective rebuttal to the charges that were leveled against her.
Well, I think she was responding to the Ari Emanuel talk. Is that correct?
Yes.
But Ari didn't necessarily say that Google didn't care. Or actually, he was inviting Silicon Valley to some sort of summit. So I mean, if they do, I mean, theoretically they would accept that invitation. But yeah, sure. Google has anti-piracy programs, and they're making investments, and I don't think that anyone doubts that they don't care at all about piracy. Whether they're doing enough or doing everything that they can, is definitely hotly disputed. And there are plenty of folks who, think that Google, especially in the last year, have been interfering with what copyright holders want. They were, pretty instrumental in knocking away SOPA. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they are nefarious or doing things wrong or doing things right. I'm just saying that's the view from content holders that Google has been a little antagonistic towards their efforts of late. But they certainly have been doing some things, and the Content ID has been credited, I think, by a lot of copyright holders.
Do you think that content rights holders are embracing this notion that they can just hang ads on the latest viral video that happens to use a Jason Mraz song and make some money out of it rather than pulling it down?
I think that they're happy. The evolution of digital ads is always makes people in the industry happy, but and I suppose that raises a lot of trademark issues too, right? Going on a different field.
Yep. One other copyright point to hit before we move on to talk about Facebook and kids. Google also released some data that you wrote about, Eriq, relating to how much its search results are being impacted by requests to remove links by rights holders. It's a pretty whopping number, and they haven't even released the YouTube data yet. Eriq, let me try and clarify. Are the requests that Google is receiving, do those relate to things that are actually copyrighted content? So say a link to an unauthorized MP3 file, or is it more a link to a site that might be trafficking in those, or are we gathering everything in under the same umbrella?
It's the specific URL of where the copyright can be found. They're not saying Google should remove, for instance, anyone who wants to go to filesonic.com. They're removing links, specific links to the content that's hosted on filesonic.com. For years, as these cyber lockers have emerged, a lot of people have commented that they don't employ their own search engines, and the reason that they did that was to escape liability. Under the Grokster thing, one of the the indications that was remarked by the courts was that.
Oop, I think Eriq. We either dropped him or... Oh, there he goes.
Yeah, easy way to search for a thing. So a lot of the companies like RapidShare or whatever, they learned from that and they decided not to install search boxes on their own websites. Instead, they just let Google do that. They let Google index their sites, and so that whenever someone's searching for, say, Fiona Apple's new album, they go to Google and it will bring them to a site like FileSonic or Pirate Bay or Mega Upload. Or that sort of thing. So the takedowns or requests for removals from URLs was purely on those, and one can argue whether Google had any responsibility whatsoever to actually comply with those, because obviously SOPA failed, and I don't think that the DMCA went strictly to the level of search engines. But there's lots of arguments to be made about whether Google's a publisher, whether they're whether they're a provider in the same way that a file sharing company is, but
And it's not a perfect system either. Google's trying to be responsive to each and every request, and most of those requests, according to Fred von Lohman, who spoke with you, Eriq, are legitimate ones, but there are some not legitimate ones as well. And so Google can't just rubber stamp these things. They have to be fairly diligent in making sure that what they're taking down should actually be taken down. I don't envy them that job. Do you, Tom?
At least, well, let me say that at least on the Google search engine links, that's true. But when it comes to, say, YouTube, which is owned by Google, and when someone sends a takedown notice on Google, things are just automatically taken down. There's no analysis of fair use. If you put something on YouTube and it gets taken down, you could file a counter notice. But it'd be wrong to say that Google has little DMCA monkeys analyzing whether the claims are rightful or wrongful.
Yeah, and I've been on the other side of that. I had an episode of Tech News Today taken down because it ran afoul of the robot, even though it was a clear, fair use news reporting situation. YouTube eventually restored it, but it took a few days, which with the daily news shows is pretty harmful. And so the system is not perfect in any direction. And I think what Google was trying to say, what Susan was trying to say in response to Emmanuel is, look, child porn is easy. That's what Ari Emanuel had said. Like, you can get rid of child porn links. Why can't you get rid of copyright links? Copyright is more nuanced. It's easier to look at something and say whether it's child pornography or not. It's harder to look at something and say that is definitely copyright infringement. Maybe that site does have a negotiated right or a license. Maybe that site has a fair use argument. It's a different situation. Mm-hmm.
Evan, I for one am a big fan of Google making this information public. It's like what Twitter has done with chilling effects. It's nice to see what sort of takedown requests are being submitted and how they're being responded to. Are you concerned about the impact of the volume of copyright takedowns on search?
Those are big numbers. Mm-hmm. So the scale of it and the scope of it should give a person the opportunity to, be concerned about this, because we're talking millions and millions of URLs that are affected here. But I don't know that's I don't know whose problem that is. Clearly, it shouldn't be Google's problem, because it is just the intermediary here, and the DMCA was designed for the very situation that Google is in, to not have to really have to give much thought as to these things. And I don't think it would make any sense for Google to put much investment into giving much diligence on these things. And I doubt that anybody in 1998, when the DMCA was being drafted, even considered the real extent to which there would be so much content. I mean, it's just so staggering to believe that, I guess the most recent figures I've read this week are that something like an hour of YouTube content is uploaded every second. So it's just staggering, and that goes to the point that Tom was talking about, how it's very difficult to even more difficult with video here. So certainly Google shouldn't be the one that's concerned here, but whatever this public interest standard, the sensibilities under that should be. There should be some scrutiny or some skepticism, and it goes to the propriety of those who are sending these takedown notices. How much investigation is going into those before they are being sent? I trust that the vast majority of them are scarcely reviewed by a human at all, if at all, and that seems to be the real point at which there should be some correction going on, so that there actually is some thought that goes into when these are going to be sent, and that will inevitably reduce these big numbers of URLs that are that have content that's been disabled. The access has been disabled too.
Okay, let's take another break and thank our second sponsor for this episode of This Week in Law, which is Squarespace, another service I use and really enjoy. It's the place where I host my own blog and have been using them for years. They're an incredible service. They're also the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. Their UI for creating and managing your site is really impossible to beat. It just makes it brainlessly easy to tweak things as much as you want to. They've recently started giving out free domains to all annual plan customers so that you never have to pay for a domain or worry about hosting it. It's all conveniently integrated when you sign up, and it requires zero configuration by making certain that domain selection and mapping happens completely seamlessly. And even if you decide to cancel your Squarespace service, your domain that you've registered in this way is yours to keep. So the days of having to go out to a second domain name registrar, make sure that you're all set up there, and then set up your site and then link them together and wait for everything to resolve itself are over, because Squarespace takes care of all that for you. It's also simplified its subscription plans and provided reduced pricing, now offering standard plans starting as low as $8 a month. It's optimized for beginners, for CSS experts, and everyone in between. It features a developer-friendly CSS editor that allows you to pop out the entire window in full screen, colorize code, undo, find, and replace. And its design templates are just beautiful. You can go in there and find one that you like, and then you can tweak it to your heart's content so that it's exactly what you want for your site. Its iPad, iPhone, and Android apps make it very easy to update everything on the go. It's got Google's complete web font library, over 300 fonts now fully integrated. And its online resources and support team are really fabulous. They are there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They really follow up and make sure that when you have a problem, they're going to help you get it resolved. Squarespace even offers free live webinar classes to help you get the most out of your Squarespace site or blog. They've got all kinds of wonderful add-ons that help you make your site just what you want: a blog module, a form builder, Flickr photo display, the Twitter widget, social media buttons for every service that you could conceivably be using, Google Maps, and more, website tracking so that you know how many times your site is viewed, and a built-in SEO feature, permission access handling, cloud architecture for speed and site stability. Use Squarespace for all your website needs. Build it, host it, and update it anytime. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to squarespace.com, sign up for a free account. You don't need a credit card. All you need is just to click, yes, I want to try it out. They're going to instantly set up your site. You can kick the tires, build it exactly how you want. Then when you decide to purchase, use the offer code
TWiL6. I cheated. I read it off the screen.
Oh, thank you. I'm not even reading the screen. Yes, use the offer code TWiL6, and you're going to get 10% off whatever your first purchase is on your new account. So if you sign up for an annual plan, you get 10% off the fee for the whole year. It's a really good offer. Squarespace.com, use the offer code TWiL6, and we're really excited that Squarespace has been a sponsor of the show, and I'm thrilled to use them myself, so hope you will too. All right, let's talk about Facebook and some things that have been going on that front. First of all, I thought it was interesting that the sponsored stories case that we've discussed previously on the show, this is a lawsuit by folks who were not happy to have their likes, etc., construed as an endorsement when Facebook started to do its sponsored stories. They sued. That was pending for a while, but at the end of May, it settled on undisclosed terms. So Facebook actually somehow made this lawsuit go away. We don't know how. We don't know if they paid them anything or presented legal arguments that maybe made the plaintiffs decide to settle. We just can't know about that. But there's certainly nothing that would prevent other plaintiffs from suing over this, because this case would only be binding on the dismissed plaintiffs here. And I think that we may well see some people getting up in arms again, because the next thing that Facebook has decided to do with sponsored stories is plunk them right down in your newsfeed. Do you know what the timing on that is, Tom? Have you been following this?
No, I haven't been following this very closely. So is what they're doing now different than the liked thing? Because what people didn't like before was they appeared to be part of the sponsorship without their permission. Has it changed?
I don't think it's really changed. I haven't seen exactly how they're going to go into the news feed, but I think the concept is the same, that you're going to see that Tom Merritt liked such and such, and so that could be construed by someone who's reading it in the news feed as Tom Merritt says
endorses.
You should go out and buy this thing. Evan, what do you think about the dismissal?
Well, it certainly is good timing for Facebook for a number of reasons. One, the launch of this different version of sponsored stories, this more enhanced sponsored kind of thingamajig going on that we're kicking around here, frees that up. The larger issue, though, pertains to Facebook's problem of continuing its growth in revenue, specifically or particularly in the mobile space. There's no room for sustainable growth in those ads that are over there on the right side of the page that we've all trained our brains to filter out when we're looking at the page. So it's somehow got to get into the main content-rich part of the online experience in much the same way that those, the product placement. We've kicked this concept around before. That brand of tequila that you were talking about a while ago. The advertisement becoming much more integrated and a part of the actual content itself. So there's the business necessity also, which has really very little to do with the legal issues that are presented in all of this. What I think is a really funny sensibility and a very just kind of quirk of human nature is it's so funny how people want to have it both ways. They get so up in arms. It's just absolutely unimaginable. You see this meme a lot. People saying, well, if Facebook were to ever start charging for its service, I would be off of there in a second. And then, there's all this stuff about, it's the cliche that, with Facebook, the user is not the consumer, the user is the product. So there's all this hue and cry on both sides that everybody wants it both ways, and they're just absolutely find it abhorrent to think that they would be part of the advertising and revenue generating experience. Well, that's just all what it's about. And so something like this is really just a difference in magnitude and not a different in kind from the whole thing that you as a person using Facebook is participating, opting into from the moment that you sign in.
I remember what this is about now. I just refreshed myself. And what they're doing that is clever is they are allowing sponsorship of things that would already appear in the news feed. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the previous one where it appeared in a sponsored area and looked more like an endorsement. This is something you would see anyway, and it gets stickier. And then it will have a little delineation that says this is sponsored, but otherwise it's not changed in any way.
Yeah, and it's at the direction of the advertiser. They can bid on that kind of stuff, pay to have that kind of stuff sponsored and show.
So if I like my gym page, that would show up in the news feed and then go away, but the gym can sponsor it and make it stick in the news feed for a little longer than it would otherwise.
That's my understanding too, yeah.
Got it. So Eriq, once again, we have people who don't want advertising. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, I've always been interested in the whole publicity rights stuff, as you know, because I cover Hollywood, and lots of celebrities have sued, claiming that their likenesses have been exploited in some commercial advertising way. And this was really an instance where consumers at large were stepping up and saying that their names and likenesses were being exploited by through advertising. Now the problem from a legal perspective, I think, is that the normal folk have a much tougher time proving damages. So yes, it might be appalling to people that your name could be used in such a commercial endeavor. But when you go to court and have to try to say that they damaged me, exploiting my rights of personality or publicity, the question is, well, okay, but how can we compensate you? For a big celebrity, that usually might mean millions of dollars in lost endorsements. But for your average Facebook user, it's really just pennies perhaps. Maybe the real legal issue is whether or not the plaintiffs could have got an enjoyment. But lawyers being as they are, they probably were more interested in the money, and if there was any settlement to anything for Facebook to throw its newfound billions of dollars from the IPO, this seems like a smart way, because they're going to need to figure out how to really to track more revenue, considering all that the problems that they're having with their share price these days.
But they might have missed an opportunity to get this issue settled in the courts the way that the broadcasters did in the case of Replay TV. But they made this case go away, but they're not going to make the angry consumers go away. And they're not going to make George Clooney go away when he gets mad that, his gym got bought by the gym and made more sticky in the news feed. So I don't see that settling the case has solved a whole lot for Facebook here. What do you think, Eriq?
Well, the upside of continuing this case, and there wasn't much either. I mean, even if you got a good judgment, that doesn't necessarily mean that you would foreclose future possible suits. Just because a few people on Facebook lost the case doesn't mean that George Clooney might not have an even greater case down the line when they use Clooney in some sort of endorsed sponsorship on Facebook. So I think I disagree with you there, because I don't necessarily see what they would have gained by continuing on. You might be right that there might be more lawsuits coming, but I don't think that it really changes the situation. But by settling now, all public companies experience shareholder lawsuits. All companies experience slip and fall cases. This is just going to be an aspect of doing business in the digital world, where you're going to get a lot of these publicity rights cases. You're going to get a lot of privacy rights violation cases. But so far, I don't think that any of this litigation going on has really affected the business substantially. And for all the problems that they're having in the public markets, I don't think that any analysts and serious investors are truly worried about small cases like this.
Okay, well, one thing we haven't mentioned about this shift that's important is that the new ads in the news feed, the endorsements, the sponsored stories, will be portable to the mobile platforms, which Facebook has obviously been struggling with.
Yeah, they've been criticized quite a bit for not knowing how to make money off of mobile. So this is another way for them to reach out and make money off of mobile. And the twist that's interesting here is you actually control whether something is available to be sponsored, but you don't control whether it gets sponsored. You can't opt out. Mm-hmm. You can't turn it off. And I think that's the one mistake Facebook always seems to make, is not giving you that last bit of control. I mean, you can decide who you're friends with, and nobody you're not friends with can see these things, and you decide what you like. You press that like button, and nothing you don't like can show up as a sponsored post. But you can't choose to say, you know what, I don't want to have this, because Facebook's scraping for money. They want to make money off that mobile platform especially.
Well, they definitely seem to have a bold streak to them in their business strategies. In fact, there has been, I sort of think of it as like Top Gun, where there was a hard deck for each hop and nobody goes below the hard deck. The hard deck for social media sites for users has always been 13 years of age because of COPPA. You go below that hard deck, you've got a whole lot of headache on your hands. But Facebook seems to be willing to tackle that problem.
They're probing the deck.
They are. They're seeing what it would be like to fly around down there because they're thinking about opening up Facebook for kids. So what they would need to do is make sure that they comply with all of the detailed requirements of COPPA and obtaining parental consent to things like having maybe a sponsored story where the kid is the sponsor. So it seems like they've got quite a lot on their hands there to grapple with. Evan, how do you feel about Facebook going there? I mean, somebody has to at some point, right? This hard deck has been kind of artificial and just takes resources and brains to figure out how to go under it.
Well, it's even more than somebody has to. It's almost as if Facebook has to here because of, again, they're a public company now, so they've got to make more and more money, be so much more acquisitive all the time and all, when it comes to money and information and all this stuff. So it makes good sense for them. They have the resources. It's a question of economies of scale. To comply with the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. I mean, this statute and the regulations under it create such a headache for online providers to go and get the right parental consent for the collection of information about kids and all of this stuff. So not just any website would want to casually take on the obligation of being COPPA compliant and saying, hey, kids, come on and sign up. So Facebook certainly has the means, the resources to do that, but it also makes perfect sense. More people to advertise to, more users who are going to grow up and become indoctrinated into the Facebook and social media culture so that Facebook can, be able to market to these people as they grow up. So I see no other viable option for Facebook than to do this. Not everybody could or should, but Facebook certainly is a platform that almost must.
I heard an interesting observation when I was over at the Tech Policy Summit earlier this week from an attendee there who said, well, this is a way to get parents back on Facebook. They were going to have to be monitoring what their kids are doing. I guess the plans, although this is all very much in progress, may include linking a child's account with a parent's account so that the parent can see what's going on there, parent-approved friend requests, and also approval of what applications they might use. Tom, do you think this is a good idea?
Well, it's interesting. There are already plenty of social networks for children, but they're just for children. They're at Disney, they're at Nick, there are places like that, and they're only just for children because it makes it easier to get that parental consent, to make sure that there is an interaction between the wrong sorts of people and the children. And I think that's why Facebook has wisely steered clear of that, like most social networks that aren't meant just for children. On the other hand, there's plenty of children on Facebook. Right now what's happening is you've got a lot of children under 13 lying about their age so they can have an account. That's an account that the parents may or may not know about. Sometimes the parents encourage that. Sometimes the parents don't know anything about it. So it's almost incumbent on Facebook to figure out how to deal with that. And one way to deal with that would be to legitimize accounts for children under 13 so that they can come under control. Doesn't mean you'll stop all the kids from lying about their age because they may not want their parents to have control of the account. But Facebook then avoids any kind of legal problems where someone comes in and says, hey, you knew children were lying about their age and were under 13 and you didn't do anything about it.
Right. Eriq, do you think that Facebook's going to forge ahead with this? What do you expect to see happen?
Yes, I think that it makes sense for them. I think that they're a little bit desperate at the moment where they're trying to give people a reason to be optimistic anyway. And I think Tom makes a great point. I think that these days, a lot of kids are going on to Facebook probably without their parents' knowledge or just not really agreeing to the terms of service and might be underage and just doing it anyway. So if Facebook could argue that they're using this as a platform to give parents a little bit more control over and monitoring what their children do, I think it can get some acceptance wide scale. Of course, there will certainly be news stories down the line of some things that go wrong, of children being kidnapped by someone that they met on Facebook. I know it's horrible, but it's inevitable that we're gonna see some things about that and some freakouts on cable news. So just be prepared, I would say.
Yeah. I think that's good advice. Well, over in Indiana, they have a law that says if you're a registered sex offender, you actually are deprived of access to social networks like Facebook. And there's a legal case pending there now as to whether that law can actually stand. The ACLU is arguing that the registered sex offenders' rights of communication, receiving information, and association are all damaged by this law. Evan, what do you think about this?
It's so toxic to talk about sex offenders and people who exploit children and trade in child pornography and all that stuff. So it's hard to have a serious conversation about this without a bunch of irrationality getting put into it. And with that said, I am siding with the ACLU on this one. The law, as it sounds in Indiana, looks like it's overbroad. If the intention is to keep sex offenders who have committed crimes against children away from children, then it's patently obvious that any restriction on all social media would be overbroad and therefore unconstitutional, a violation of the First Amendment, because it's not narrowly tailored to meet this compelling interest of keeping pedophiles away from children. The very fact that we're talking about it as a novelty to keep people, as a novelty to legitimately place people on Facebook who are under 13 shows that the natural implication, I'm just totally belaboring the obvious here, the natural implication is that it's mostly adults who are on these social media platforms. And so what's the purpose of a statute then to keep sex offenders who have harmed children away from other adults? So as dissonant as it sounds when I utter the words, I'm on the ACLU side.
All right. Well, at least Facebook wasn't quite so bold as when they're exploring having kids on the site to go in and actually file something in support of the ACLU's position in this case and argue we've got to have the kids and the sex offenders.
We want it all.
We want it all.
They're just data points.
Yes, exactly. All right, folks. Well, I think we're going to move on to our tip and resource of the week. Our resource of the week is for all of you who might be in Tom's position, facing a challenge, perhaps, to video that you've put online at YouTube. There's a great site that has made its way through the process of doing a challenge to a DMCA takedown notice. It's called fairusetube.org, and it's a guide to YouTube removals. So it step by step discusses, what you have to go through, what decisions you have to make, and how to decide whether to move forward to try and defend your video if you think it has been removed improperly. So file this away for future reference, Tom.
That's good to know. fairusetube.org. And then our tip of the week, there has been a meme floating around. A number of people have come and dropped by the TWiL Facebook page and said, people are starting to put these disclaimers on their Facebook page saying that if you're the government, you're not allowed to come and gather any of my information. No matter who you are, you're not allowed to do that. So it's sort of trying to be a one-stop boilerplate remedy to having public information be public. I should have worn my EULA T-shirt that absolves me of all EULAs if you look at my T-shirt.
Right. Exactly. It's that concept.
It's the same kind of thing.
Same kind of concept. And for some reason, it sprang up after the IPO. People decided, well, now that it's a public company, this should work. But Snopes has a good article on why, if you go ahead and tell the government or anyone else on Facebook that they can't have your stuff, it's not actually binding. It's Facebook's terms of service that you're bound by. So whatever you make public is going to be seen by whomever. Although an interesting footnote to this is a site we discussed previously on the show called Tossamend. Evan, do you remember that?
I do.
And we bandied back and forth and decided that Tossamend, which the idea is to actually make amendments to terms of service and then send it back to the server from whence they came. The question would be whether that actually gives notice to the terms of service writer that they would be bound by. And Tossamend is still out there. It's a Firefox plugin, I believe. I don't know that it's actually, reached the point of legal crisis. Nobody has yet decided to amend their terms of service and push that, hey, I'm not bound by that. But it could well happen, and the Tassamend Fellow actually got some law professors to write a piece about how and when such terms would be enforceable. So don't put a disclaimer on your Facebook page, but do check out Tassamend, and if you decide to be the test case, let us know. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of This Week in Law. It's been great to have Eriq Gardner back on the show from The Hollywood Reporter Esquire. Thank you for all your insights, Eriq.
Great being with you.
And for the great writing you constantly do over there. Eriq is also at Eriq with a Q, Gardner, on Twitter. We hope to have you on again soon.
Yes, absolutely.
And Tom Merritt, it's great to have you here in the studio with us on the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's been a pleasure. Evan, great to have you back.
It's great to be here. You know, I'm sitting here thinking about what would happen if Tom was wearing his EULA T-shirt that absolves him from all EULAs. If somebody wearing the identical shirt were to look at Tom, and Tom were to look at him or her wearing that shirt, what would be the legal effect of that?
The legal framework of our country would dissolve.
Dark matter. It would be a huge explosion.
And all the founding fathers would, become zombies and erupt from their graves and stuff. So, yeah, let's just try not to make that happen.
We'd need Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter back.
There we go. We've set it up perfectly.
Absolutely. Well, guys, this has been great. Thanks so much for being on the show today. And we will see you next week. On This Week in Law, we record at 11 o'clock on Fridays, every single Friday. So please be sure to join us. And if you're not someone who watches live, you can go over to our show page at twit.tv/TWiL. All our archives are there. We're also on YouTube and in iTunes, and however you like to consume your net-distributed broadcasting, we'll be there for you. And we'll see you next week. Take care.